Hi, welcome to Business Influencers with TALRadio. My name is Chris Salem, your host. We hope everyone's having a great week. Again, we want to thank you, the listeners, each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers as the show continues to grow in size. Thanks to you. And we are committed, as always, to bringing subject matter experts to share their words of wisdom, insights, and personal experiences to help take your level of influence in business to the next level. Today's show is being brought to you today by Biz Explosion Conferences. They're putting on their Achieve Biz Explosion Conference June 9th through the 10th in Denver, Colorado. And I can personally say I've been to their events, and they are extraordinary. Not only a great way to network, but a great opportunity to generate new business and even better, new friends. If you'd like to find out more information about them, you could go to achievebizconferences.com. That's B-I-Z. So achievebizconferences.com. And again, it's going to be a great event. I will actually be out there myself, and I'm looking forward to doing the keynote there. So feel free to reach out, and we'd love to see you at Achieve Biz Explosion Conference. With that being said, again, our show continues, as I mentioned, to grow. And if you have any questions or any insights to any new material or content you'd like to see on our show, feel free to reach out to us anytime, and we'd be more than happy to entertain that for a future show. We're going to be talking today about how to engineer luck. Now, everybody loves luck, right? We all need to require a little luck in our businesses and our personal lives. But when it comes to influence, it's about how do we create your luck. In this case, we're going to learn how to engineer your luck. And we're here with Dan Nicholson, and he's going to be talking to us today. And Dan is a serial entrepreneur since birth. He took a detour through conventional model of graduating summa cum laude with degrees in accounting and information systems, completing a fellowship at the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, working at Deloitte and various Fortune 500 companies, and being named to the 40 under 40 list of global accountants 4 times. One day, Dan woke from his cloud of dissonance and tired of the corporate drudgery of meetings and about meetings and future meetings. Now he takes the conventional and applies it to the non-conventional by helping purpose-driven entrepreneurs achieve financial certainty. Dan is the founder of multiple companies across finance, accounting, and software, but his real passion is teaching entrepreneurs and small business owners. He is the founder of Certainty U and a creator of a 20-week entrepreneurial educational course and certification, Certified Certainty Advisor. And this course teaches the concepts, principles, and action steps to become an extraordinary leader and reach the top 1% in your industry. Finally, he's also the author of the USA Today and Wall Street Journal bestseller, Rigging the Game. You'll learn a little bit more about that book here later today. How to achieve financial certainty, navigate risk, and make money on your terms. And he is the host of the popular podcast, Rigging the Game, and he lives in Seattle with his wife and 2 daughters. And without further ado, we welcome Dan Nicholson to the show. Dan, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Yeah, thanks for having me on.
We are such a pleasure to have you. And we love this topic. We've always been a big fan about, how do we create luck? That are we prepared to meet when opportunity presents itself? Can you talk a little bit about, Dan, the concept of engineering luck or engineering your own luck?
Yeah. So you mentioned in the bio about how I've got a podcast and book called Rigging the Game, and people hear that title and they think I'm talking about something kind of potentially unethical. It's a little bit salacious. I'm a little bit intentional about that as well. But the concept of rigging the game is really about engineering luck. And what I mean by that is, how do we get what we want on our terms without compromise? And the without compromise is the biggest challenge. I mean, this, talking to entrepreneurs and just all the work that you do, that so many of us go on this journey and then we feel like we have to become somebody else and make all these compromises. And it turns out that when you really do the research and you look at those who've gotten extraordinary results, it boils down to a few basic things. And I write about this in the book in detail. One, I can sort of call it, they were eccentric before they were billionaires. Right? So we tend to, in other words, I call it, they played their game. They weren't trying to become someone that they weren't, someone that they're not. They leaned into their true disposition. You can pull on countless examples over millennia. 2, they understand their biases. They understand the fact that we're all biased, and 3, they build tools around that, mental models, principles that account for their style, their game that they're playing, and their biases. Unfortunately, many of us don't actually do that. We try to be someone that we're not. We have what I call multiple business personality disorder. Whenever we listen to a new podcast or read a new book, we have a new set of principles and a new way of being, and we're constantly changing. And then we do the I'm not biased, you're biased. And the consequence of that is that we approach things from the perspective of maximum effort and maximum risk. And as a result, we have no options. And when we have no options, when the actual exponential opportunities avail themselves, we can't capitalize. So when we talk about engineering luck, it's actually putting yourself in a position of high level readiness where when these options avail, we can take advantage. We can.
Wow, I love that. And Dan, what would you recommend? Like if somebody were hearing this, we have people that are various levels in their level of influence in terms of business or business in general. What would be what would be some of the things that you would recommend? Like if you were looking to build a foundation of how we can engineer luck so that when, like you said, when those opportunities present itself, we are prepared and ready to execute.
Well, we're recording this in mid-March, and so we're not that far away from New Year's resolutions, okay? And around New Year's resolution, I asked my clients and my employees and said, "Hey, just curious, what are your New Year's resolutions?" And this year in particular, what I honed in on was everyone had some version of more discipline or more restraint. And then I would ask them, "Okay, how are you going to do that? Eat better, exercise more. Just got to be more disciplined about it." They're like, "Okay, how are you going to be more disciplined?" And their answer is by being more disciplined. Like, I'm just going to try harder. Have you experienced that? Have you heard people where you're like, "How are you going to do that?" Well, I'm just going to work at it more. And the problem with that approach is it's a rigid chaos model. You have something that feels chaotic to you, and so your solution is to implement something super rigid. And then what happens on the other side of that is because it's not sustainable, you go back to chaos and you vacillate back and forth between this rigid and chaos. And along the way, you might think you're making progress, but you're actually, because you're moving quick, but speed doesn't have direction. You might be actually running in a circle. All right? Velocity, that's what we care about. That's speed. Speed doesn't have a direction. So what I start talking to people about, and this is a concept, again, from my book about how we create asymmetry to the upside, significant upside, is instead of chasing more discipline, what do you really need? How about you be less impulsive? So how about we design different systems so that at the end of the day, we don't have to be so disciplined. We don't need so much restraint. And there's a bunch of studies about how these concepts like discipline, we have a kind of reserve for the day, and when we use it up, can't really call on more necessarily. We got to do some sort of reset. And so we're wired, dopamine is the molecule of more. We're wired to always think more is the answer. But actually in engineering luck, eliminate all the bad stuff. If you eliminate all the bad stuff, all the downsides, you're only left with upside. But we only focus on upside. We don't want to think about the downsides.
Yeah. That's it. That's an interesting approach. So is there some element of, like, when we get really rigid or we get too disciplined, we get too caught up maybe in what we can't control, maybe, versus now if we loosen up a little bit, we can focus on what we can control and let go of what we can't. Would that be, if I heard that correctly?
Yeah, so we're all subject to biases. You could study Daniel Kahneman, Thinking Fast and Slow. You could
Yep.
study Dr. Jeff Spencer, who's a good friend of mine, System 1, System 2. There are all these different same versions of the fact that we're all biased. We're subject to loss aversion, anchoring bias, then all these cognitive distortions, shoulds, overgeneralizations, et cetera, et cetera. Some more than others, right? I'm more likely to say all these things I should be doing. That's sort of like my kind of default. And so really step one is understanding how that's controlling your day-to-day decision making, and then design processes around that.
Mm.
So let me give, if it's okay with you, I'll
Yeah,
give you
please
an
do.
example.
We'd love to hear that.
Okay. So I used to do a lot of endurance sports like triathlon, half Ironman type marathons, etc. And if you've ever done any sort of endurance sports, there's this term PR, personal record. It's like your fastest race time, right? And typically when you hit a PR, it's meaningful because it's a record. Like, I've been working towards this. All right. So the thing that people who are doing endurance athletics know is that I can't run that pace every day. That's otherwise it's not a personal record. I've got to train up to it for this specific event. Now, what many of us actually do, though, in our day to day is that we're anchored to our personal best in terms of work output. And like that one day where I responded to all 500 emails in my inbox, I had 7 meetings, I, just firing on all cylinders. We get anchored to that, and then that becomes our expectation. And we make commitments based off this, what I know I'm capable of doing. And that's our personal best. But the problem is that when I design a system around that sort of personal best, unknowingly, this is usually an unknowingly type thing, that almost every day I'm going to fail because it was my personal best. So I have a lot of downside, but very little upside.
Mm.
The alternative is, what if I design and set expectations based off my rolling average? What do I typically get done?
Yeah, so you're not going to always beat the time, but you're going to be in that range.
Over time, you get a little bit faster, so your rolling average
Okay, got it.
improves, right? So, but if I set, okay, on an average day, I get 50 emails done, not 500, and I get 3 meetings, and this sort of my rolling average, and I design things around it. On the days now where I happen to have a lot of energy, I got a great night's sleep, I've been eating well, whatever it may be, that I have all this energy, I get a bunch more work done. That was all upside. That's kind of what I mean. And how do we think about constructing systems so that we're manufacturing upside as opposed to feeling like we're failing most days, overspending, chasing more revenue because we've made all these commitments, scaling based off a single data point. Last month we had 80,000 revenue. Now I'm a 7-figure firm. So now I'm making every decision based off this 1 month, not even a trend yet. It's just a data point, right? And so then we overspend because we're anchored to this idea that we have a 7-figure business. I can give you over 2,000 data points of people doing this, extrapolating out these single data points, making it a norm, spending based off that, and then finding themselves 3 months later in a lot of pain, a lot of
in the hole. Yeah.
in the hole. Yeah.
Wow. And what would you now, if you're looking at this, if we're looking at this from a business perspective, there are going to be, some people on here that have small businesses, small companies, there are people that work for larger companies. Where does this start? Like when you look at engineering luck, is it at the individual level? Is it a team thing? It depends again, the size of the organization, or, if you're your own business and you're a solopreneur.
Yeah, it's a great question. You are the center of everything. And so I have these 4 commandments. They're the basis for how we engineer luck. One, we bias closer over more. What I mean by that, every action has to get us closer to what we want. That requires us to be really clear on what it is that we want and accept that that's a moving target. Number 2, understand the difference between preference versus right and wrong or binary. So almost all the decisions as a small business owner in particular that you're asking, those are preferences. Should you grow your business? That's actually a preference. Should you work with your spouse? Should you hire this marketing agency? Those are preferences. Two people could answer that question differently. I say, what would Google do? If you can't go to Google and get the right answer, because you're going to get thousands of opinion pieces, comes back to you. What are you optimizing towards? 3, every decision has an infinite number of trade-offs. We have to think about the secondary consequences. So when we tie up our money is not infinite. Time is not infinite, right? There's more than one currency. So when we tie up a resource in our time or money in an investment that doesn't have a lot of upside, we've removed all these other opportunities we could have been investing in. This is where folks really miss out. Just the 4th point, every bet that we make has to have asymmetry to the upside. What does that mean? We need significantly more, hopefully 100x more upside than downside. Those are the parameters that I operate within to engineer luck. Right now, we're in this banking crisis sort of situation.
Yeah, the Silicon Valley Bank. Yeah,
perfect case in point. Go back to 2008. You look at the gap in wealth between the 1% and everyone else, and the gap now. What happened? It got exponentially bigger. You can look over time and see that trend keeps happening. Reasonable to project 5 years from now, the chasm's going to be even greater. Why? Because the people who are in the 1% plus, right, they're going to engineer the outcome going forward. They have options, right? So they're putting themselves in a position, right? Debt's going to be hard to get. That's because things are going to be on sale. You're putting yourself in a position where these opportunities, when they become available, you execute on them. It's not necessarily, I call it engineering luck, but it's more putting yourself in a position where you're ready to capitalize on those opportunities. Most of us just aren't ready to capitalize, so we miss out and the chasm gets bigger.
Yeah. What did you say? Like when you talk about some of these things is there some kind of consistency in doing certain things? Like maybe things like, if I were doing something that I knew that served me, whether it was towards my well-being or my personal and professional relationships or my skills, those are the things that are going to then, if I get better, then I'm more likely to see those opportunities rather than maybe perhaps being blind to them.
So some of us are in the extreme. Some of us are naturally gifted at identifying these opportunities, the Elon Musks, et cetera, they just naturally see it. For the rest of us, we need a system, a process to be able to identify. And that's really a book is my step-by-step sort of operating system on how we identify these opportunities. And most of it is how do I continually get clear on what I actually want, get clear on whether or not I'm operating under false pretenses. So how do I get what I would call mental sobriety? And then how do I systematically eliminate the downsides? Because I believe, and I'll give you another data point, in my previous life when I was in treasury, kind of capital management, one of my main clients, Microsoft, they have over $200 billion in cash or investable assets. Most of it short-term investments. Most of the time they were talking about how to eliminate downside. How do we just hedge all the risks, eliminate all the risks so that we only have upside? And again, that's not what the average person or normal person does. They're just chasing after, oh, that number looks good. And we can use, again, the last year on these crashes, crypto, multiple things melted down, and you see it happen. This contagion spreads and it compounds because we see a single data point, like chart going up, good, I should buy. Chart going down, bad, I should sell. And if that's your criteria, you get wrecked. right? Because you're just looking at what happened now, extrapolating that out, making an irrational decision, executing, and on to the next thing. So you need the tools to process the issues consistently.
I agree. I agree. In terms of the tools, these are things obviously you have in your book, Rigging the Game. And is it something that takes a little time to absorb, again, that consistency of doing something? Or is it just, again, that you could, what it is, but you just, you have to do it, so to speak?
It takes a little bit of time to absorb because it's a different, I'm asking people to unlearn things that they thought they knew in the way that I had to unlearn. I thought business school, got good grades, did all these, things that look good on a resume if I was trying to get other Fortune 500 jobs. And then I finally became a full-time entrepreneur, and I kept getting smacked in the face. But I'm doing all the research. And I had to start unlearning how the tools that we use in a big corporation don't work for a small business owner. Big corporation optimizing for shareholders, just maximize wealth for the shareholders. Individual, you're optimizing for what you want. And getting clear on that is challenging. And again, most of us are, and this is another hyperbolic term, but most of us, unfortunately, are in so much pain from all the scrutiny and expectations that we get from the outside world as entrepreneurs, and then the internal shame and guilt, that we think the answer is put in more effort. We're told to take more risk, bet on yourself. And we become kind of exploitable, very subject to just let me buy that next one step, that one hack that's going to give me that's going to unlock everything. And then you tie up all your resources, and then you're no longer in a position to actually capitalize on those 2 or 3 moments over the course of the year that are really going to transform your business.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. This is some great stuff that you're sharing here. And we encourage all the listeners that are watching, take notes here, go back and listen to this again. Any other things you could share, Dan, from around this topic from the book, like in terms of, breaking into really create engineering, would it start with, learning this process, again, from what you illustrate in your book?
Step 1 is I call create your solvable problem. Solvable problem is many of us have done the vision board type stuff.
Yeah.
But the problem with the vision board is that it doesn't actually tell us the resources we need to make that stuff happen. And so we do it, we get all hopped up on dopamine. Maybe the next day we wake up at 4 a.m., we take the cold showers, we're hustling, we're grinding. Okay. And then 2 weeks later, you're like, hey, how's that vision board going? And you're like, let's not talk about that, because it doesn't tell us what we really need. So I created this tool called the Certainty app, where you basically take your vision board and you put in the date. I want 6-pack abs in a year, and there's a cost to that. It's going to cost me 10 grand because I need a trainer and I need to eat differently. And I need more time. So maybe I'm going to take less clients or do something else. So there's a cost I want the house and the retirement and all those things. We put a date and a dollar value to it. And then we put in how much do we have currently in our accounts, and what are we making currently? And then it calculates for you how much more you need to make to hit all of those deadlines. It's like a Google Maps for your finances to show you, okay, you know what, actually you're making enough already. You're right on track. Or you know what, you need another 20 grand a month. And so this gives us a tool to measure, are the decisions that we're making getting us closer or further away from the outcome that we want?
Wow.
If we don't have that tool, then we're just gambling. I actually believe that all of us entrepreneurs are gamblers. We just can't call it that because of the societal reasons.
Yeah, like you said, yeah, because we're not going to Vegas and here, but it's a good way. It's a good we're gambling in a good way here.
That's right. Yeah. So
Betting on yourself.
I'm always trying to take effort and risk off the table. So if I see, hey, I need to make 20 grand more a month, I go, let me look at what I currently have going on and see if I can get there without having to do more. How can I get there? So a couple of years ago, my main number one priority was I wanted 10 more hours of free time per week.
And that's something I think a lot of people would like to get, especially in this world that we're so busy and on the go.
So 10 more hours. Okay, how can I do that in the most efficient way?
Yeah.
So one, I got an office instead of being downtown 7 minutes from my house. So I cut out almost the entirety in commute time. And so I got this extra cost. So then I look, okay, and I have this process I call cash flow engineering. And I go through my existing kind of expenses, et cetera. And I go, you know what? I have all these software as a service stuff that are on auto renewal that I haven't used in like 3 years. Cut all those expenses. That was more than $2,500. Wasn't even using these things anyways. Now I've paid for my office.
Wow.
And I have my time back.
It's amazing what you just shared. I mean, so many great things, what you just said, where that could be applied in getting your time back, cutting costs, creating, maybe increasing your revenue, all of the above. I mean, there's so many great things you just shared there.
Yeah. And if it's okay with you, I'll quick process, because people hate budgeting. Quick process for how to narrow in.
Please do. Yeah, that's fine.
Expenses, because really it's about less effort, less risk. So I have more options. If I have more options, I'm more likely to get the things that I want. And we're putting ourselves ready for the kind of luck to show up. I take all my expenses for the last 12 months. I go down, I just say yes or no. Is this a core expense or not? Core is my business can't operate without it. Then I look at all the ones that I've said no, and that ends up being a lot of stuff. These are the things that are my gambles that I've rationalized. I got to do this because it's going to save me more time or generate more revenue or be more efficient. And then I go, what is the evidence? What is the actual return? Have I saved time? Has my team saved time? Where's the data? And often I have no data whatsoever. So now I have a discussion to be had, which is this expense worth continuing or not? Mm-hmm. And again, oftentimes we set up stuff, it goes on autopilot, we get anchored to it, lost it. So our idea, it's got to work out. It's no longer serving us. There's no evidence to support the ROI. I'm going to recapture that stuff. It's not core to the business. It's speculative. There's no ROI. Cancel. I do this exercise with clients over and over again. And oftentimes, I had one client who wanted to buy a beach house. And she's like, I think I'm 5 years away. So let's go through same thing. She bought that house 45 days later.
Wow. She
already had it all there on stuff that was speculative bets that there was no demonstrable that she'd been doing for years. And what? But this is going to grow my business. But it hasn't. Would you rather have the beach house or would you rather keep speculating on this? And she chose the beach house.
That's amazing. It's amazing how you just a quick little shift in the way some of this process that you showed, how it can make that change. Well, Dan, we're near the end of the show, and I want to make sure people get to know you because you have so much more information. And I know you're going to be on another show of ours, Sustainable Success, in the future. I would like you, if you could just share, how can people get a hold of you, what you're up to, and anything where they can get their hands on rigging the game.
So it turns out I'm not particularly creative. If you go to riggingamazon.com, that'll take you to my book checkout page on Amazon. Rigging the Game is where all my other kind of information and links are. So yeah, try to make it as easy as possible.
That's fabulous. Well, we highly encourage everybody to reach out to Dan and get to know him. I mean, he just touched the tip of the iceberg here. If this show were an hour and a half long, we would have had even more quality information, and we will definitely have Dan back on the show. Dan, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And listeners, we want to thank you each and every week joining us here at Business Influencers. Again, we are committed each and every week in bringing subject matter experts like Dan in to share their words of wisdom and insights. More importantly, their experience in helping you to decide what that can do in your business. We highly encourage you, again, reach out to Dan here, get your hands on that book. There's a couple things that you can be doing here. What he talked about can make a huge difference in perhaps your business, your level of influence, and some of the personal things that you're striving to accomplish here. Till then, everybody, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you next week.